right, everything's been blocked out and we're almost ready to go here. It's prep time. I'd like to talk a little bit about pulling the door handle. Some guys would tape that off. The only thing I'm willing to tape off is those belt moldings because of the clips on these Chryslers are really difficult. And I want to show you guys this handle. So basically when you pull the inner door panel off, you can see there's 1, 2, 3 bolts, and then here's the handle, and I put the bolts back in it. Talk about a partial birth abortion. This is a nightmare. I don't know if I have enough light in here for you guys to see because my camera doesn't have one, but when you get the door panel off, there's a little rubber flap right here that you can open and get your hand up in there, and yeah. At any rate, door handle's off and I'll mask it. But what I'm doing now, and I had somebody ask about this tool because I mentioned it in another video, that's the little fiberglass tip prep pen here. And where it's good, you can usually get your Scotch-Brite pretty tight up in there, but around little stuff like that, and sometimes down in these door handles, or if you're doing a vehicle where you're afraid to pull the bumper cover off because it's broken or something like that, and you have to get real tight into this edge, which, you know, that would be right up against there, use this prep pen to scuff on it. So I'll show a little bit more about it here real quick, and then we'll move on to more prep work. So basically, we've got the antenna where it comes through the fender on this vehicle. And the problem is, I have the tool to release it, but I can't get it to move. And I don't want to chew all the chrome off of it, so I've masked it. And I don't know, I hope that the camera doesn't have focus problems because I have a wide angle lens on it, and having it zoomed, it may not like that. But basically, you're just going to take this little pen, and it sort of self-destructs. It chips away as you're using it. But the way I've got this masked, I actually have maybe a 1 millimeter gap between the bottom of the antenna mast and where it touches the fender. I'd rather get clear coat on the antenna mast on the bottom than have the clear bridge onto the fender. So I'll just do half of it here real quick to give you guys a kind of a rough idea of what this little bugger is capable of. Now you should probably be wearing gloves with this because these are little fiberglass shards, but I'm not going to touch the panel. And I've been prepping the rest of it with gloves on, but I'll take you guys off the stand and hold the camera real close to that, so you guys can get a better look-see. But basically that scuffed it right up into that edge. Real nice. I'm not finished with it, of course, but I wanted to give a quick how-to on using this dude right here. They're like, I don't know if it was $5 or $10, but it's a time saver. Another place it might be handy, where the fender meets the A-pillar here, puts you some tape on the A-pillar and scratch on the edge of that fender in there, because sometimes when you fold up a Scotch-Brite, unless you have big long fingernails, it's hard to get around there. Now you can stuff it together and wedge it in there and rub it back and forth, but you know, it's just one of those things where it comes in handy. I got all this primer finished out in 600 and wet checked it with some wax and grease remover about 2 hours ago, and everything looks arrow straight to me, so I'm pretty stoked about that. I did, however, break one of my rules. I cut through to the primer here. I just had a real goofy area in here that I needed to block, so I will spot some epoxy over those burn throughs that are bad, and a little bit along this edge and that corner down there, and those are the only bad ones I see. So 600 finished on the primer, and I do re-guide coat after I 400 sanded. I started blocking with 320, If you're comfortable that you're not going to put 180 scratches in your paint, block it with 180 first if you want, but you really got to work and re-guide coat and make sure you get rid of those 180 scratches. You'll have a abomination on your hands. You will see those 180 scratches, especially if the primer is only a day old. It takes a long time for primer to actually fully cure. You can sand it, but even if it sands nice, it doesn't mean that it's still not going to shrink down a little bit and show those scratches. And I learned the hard way. But through the power of YouTube, I was set straight about 4 or 5 years ago on making sure that you finish sand all around your body work before you prime with 320, and you don't have those problems. That and time is your friend. Solvents are not. Let the primer sit. If you can let it set, if you're doing a resto job on your car and you can let it sit for a week out in the sun or something like that, because the longer you can let it gas off and let all the solvents out, the better off you're going to be. So I let this thing sit out in the sun for a day and a half. It doesn't matter if it's only 45 degrees out, as long as the panels are getting warm. The panels were 100 degrees. I do have the infrared lamp, or the short or medium wave lamp I can use and put on it, but putting it out in the sun works great. So I went ahead and did that. Rest of this panel is getting done with 800 grit. I sort of went over it with 600, and I'll show you why. I don't know how well the camera picks it up, and I always talk about getting a lot of texture in a panel. I think maybe the camera will show this. I don't know if I'm too close or too far away. This door wasn't really textured, but you can see the reflection of the shop light right there, how ripply that is. And most of this van looks like it was painted with a 3/8 nap roller. It's Chrysler, so it is what it is. But if you can sand all the orange peel out of your panel, and you can see where there's white spots there, there's still peel in this panel. Of course, when I wipe it off, you don't see it, but if you can knock that down, and 800 really won't do it on a soft interface pad on the DA. It'll cut some of it down, but it takes forever. If you can knock that back down to flat and you put your own finish on it, then you'll have a better chance of matching this cobbled up shit than you will of piling texture on top of texture, and then it'll be worse than this because you're just adding more material to the panel that's already textured, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys or not, but I'm slowly learning to try and match orange peel on adjacent panels rather than to try and cut them completely slick. So whether I have to sand trash out of them or not, but that's where we're at for now. I have some seam sealing to do, and I'm going to work on this prep and mask, and this is what I'm using to finish off these panels here for the clear coat. This is 800 grit. That's Eagle Abrasives, Kovacs paper. Stuff is super sharp. The other thing I use, and I don't know what I did with it. Oh, it's in my pocket. And you guys have seen these before. This is the same thing, 800 grit. It's got this little foamy softback pad for it, so you don't put finger marks in it. And it will cut like nobody's business. This has not been cut yet. Watch what a couple, that's it, and it's already taken the texture, well, it makes it look like it's taking the texture down, but it's already dulling up. These things are awesome for little narrow areas like this and this little flat area right here, because if you got a 6-inch DA pad, even if it's got a soft interface on it, you don't know how much clear is on that edge right there, and you burn through it, especially if it's your blend panel, then you're screwed, because then you got to get color on that blend panel and seal off that cut through, because sometimes that can come back and bite you. But everything's, like I said, everything's blocked out pretty much to my liking. I haven't seen anything that really screams problem area to me yet. On these were blocked with a like a semi-soft block with 400 and then a hand pad with 600, and they were re-guide coated in between. Again, I don't take chances, and I know the camera doesn't pick it up, and I probably tried to show it in another video or a previous clip, but this whole vehicle is just got scratches going diagonal all over every inch of this vehicle, like somebody blocked it and didn't buff it out. And I think I've come to the answer on why it's like that. I thought maybe it had transport damage or parking lot damage or something like that before they bought it. And after thinking back in the steps of prepping this vehicle and how thick the undercoat was on this, and maybe it's a Chrysler thing, I don't know, because I haven't seen too many of these. But there was a thick gray undercoat on this, which I'm wondering if it wasn't some sort of high build, either polyester primer or something. Maybe it had hail damage. I don't know. But whatever it is, this vehicle's been molested at some point. They're not car wash scratches. There's just no way, unless possibly the car wash brushes alternate and come down at an angle like this and then an angle like this. I don't know. I mean, it looks like blocking scratches from long blocking it this way and that way. I just don't think I can get the camera to pick it up. I've sanded a lot of it off, or sanded it dull so you can't really see it. I did take some pictures. Maybe I'll try and insert those, but it's ungodly. So at any rate, I'm going to cut you loose. This is getting long, and I will bring you back for some masking.